This is the Unscripted Podcast.
Morning, Bob.
Good morning. Good morning.
What's your eyes all puffy for?
Yeah, it's called Back to Tennessee Allergies. Leave all the concrete of Chicago. Come back.
Is the leaves starting to change there yet?
No. I mean, it would be faint if it is a little bit.
I talked to Mama this morning about 6. Well, been about about 6 our time, and she said they were starting from the tips now. They'll start from the top down. She asked me. She said, "Is y'all's leaves changing yet, Bubba?" I was like, "Mama."
There's pine needles.
Yeah.
In South Mississippi.
They don't change, right? I mean, like they're pines. And she's like, "Well, I know you have some hardwoods." I said, "Well, we do, Mama, but they're going to turn brown and die. We don't get the leaf hospice like you get in Virginia, where they're going through their death throes." And so no, but she said, "Well, you was talking about the weather changing." I was like, "Mama, that's just kind of like a bad cold. It's raging. The heat is raging all the time, but you may get a reprieve from it every once in a while before it really clears up." So no. We still got hot weather to go here. So
yeah, there's one thing that is changing is Tennessee is just schooling people. I mean, we beat the worst team in the nation. We beat the brakes off of them, Saturday night.
Hey, Carolina's 2-0 too, buddy.
2-0. Y'all only played 2 games?
Yep, 2-0. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Bless them.
Yep.
So who did y'all play?
We played.
Well, we beat Purvis last week, so.
Well, we've played. It was North Carolina Central or something like that. It's one of them. One of them ones where you just pay somebody to. Well, we're actually played 3 games. Now we played Charlotte too, but we're playing with the first game was Minnesota, which was that's a pretty equal opponent for Carolina, Big Ten school. And then we played the 2, podunk teams, which is, in-state school stuff. But I saw Mississippi, was it Ole Miss or Mississippi State one that put up about 800 points or something like that against some team. I mean, they just kept beating and beating and beating on them. I think it was Ole Miss, wasn't it?
I don't know. We were this is normally where Ben knows a little something, and Ben's not in the studio today.
Yeah, Ben's gone to he's about to get hitched, so they're in the throes of their marriage counseling.
Marriage counseling.
Yeah, Ben. I said we were talking last night. And he was like, I said, "What are you learning?" He's like, "I'm learning I'm messing up." I was like, that's you won't learn that. That's not something that you will learn and be like, okay, I'm over this. Right? This is something that this is an evolutionary thing that you'll never reach the top of the chain with. You're always going to be there with this one. He said, "Well, he said I feel like it's kind of like being the kicker." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, if you come out and you do it and you do a good job of it, you can win the game. But if you mess it up, everybody hates you." And I was like, there's also another side to this, Ben. Really, if you think about it, like nobody wants to see the kicker anyways, because at best, you're 3 points on the board. That's about all you're really ever good for, 3 points on the board. And I said, you really don't, the kicker's not even a good scenario, for this one. Everybody wants 7 in a conversion. I mean, 6 in a 2-point conversion. I said, they want 8 points. They don't want 3. I said, so if the kicker's coming out, it's already a bad situation anyway. So don't use the kicker as your analogy.
Yeah, it's nobody's really excited about the kicker unless it's just a game-winning field goal, and there's no time left. We just let this thing tick down, and it's like, well, is he going to mess this all up, or is this going to be fine? And
yeah, the kicker's a last-ditch effort, man. You don't want that. You want, it's like my wife is a Alabama fan, and so they can be beating somebody. They'll be beating somebody by 40 points, or if they're not beating somebody by 40 points, she's just on edge, and it's like, Jessica, it's 4 minutes to go and y'all were up by 38. Like, I don't, she's like, yeah, but if we can get one more. I'm like, one more what? Like, one more what? Well, I mean, what is it that you want one more of? Another touchdown? And that'll do what? put you up by 45. I mean, like like they're going to have to put up in the fourth quarter against Alabama. They're going to have to score about 5 touchdowns in 4 minutes. I said that is about 38-second drives back to back to back to back. I said Al Bundy couldn't even do that.
Yeah,
So,
I'll tell you, I'm just all about, like, I've never been so excited to play against Alabama in a season. Like it's been 20 years since I've been excited about playing against Alabama, and
well, I'll tell you, I don't know where they'll fall, but this will be some unique years because I'll say this, that Alabama has learned something really well now, and they've learned with Saban and this. They learned that they didn't need to find an Alabama guy for the Alabama job. They learned that they
yeah,
had to find a guy for the Alabama job, and that's the difference, right? They always wanted, until Saban, they wanted to kind
yeah,
of,
they wanted to keep the pedigree close to
yeah,
home, and
yeah,
we raised up our Alabama boy, and yeah,
right,
there's and I tell you, and this kind of goes along with ministry, and I think it can go along with with I think what we can talk about today, but just thinking about, um, do you have to be Nick Saban, status to do a Bible study with somebody, to share
no,
Jesus with somebody,
no,
and so what if every head coach said, well, I ain't Nick Saban. I don't have all these, rings on my finger. We had a prayer night last night at church, and I love doing those things. And it was, just watching the process of people growing and hearing it in their prayers. And so the way that we do it, and everybody can do something different, but we had like our little kids, thing at the start of church, uh, then we have, sorry, our German Shepherd's coming to say hi this morning, and we have our kids, thing, and then have a couple songs, and then I just say a couple verses about prayer, and then we break out, and we had about, I think it was, our crowd was down yesterday, and I made the mistake in ministry. I was like, we're going to break out into small groups tonight, so y'all come back. Well,
right.
everybody's like,
What it ended up was a small
when,
group.
yeah, well, yeah, you get the people who are excited about the small group, So we had like, I don't know, about 20. I think it was 22 guys and 20, about, I don't know, 15 or 20 ladies, and but man, just hearing those guys pray, and like we had a guy baptized him uh, at the beginning of this year, 2 of them. One was baptized in, I think in May, and one was baptized January 1st. Well, the guy January 1st said both these guys are in their 60s. All right, had never obeyed the gospel, and so the guy who I baptized in May, he prayed for the first time out loud amongst brothers last night. And man, I mean, I'm just over there like weeping, and
Hmm.
'cause I'm sitting right beside him, and he's going last. And so all these, we start with I always try to start with like 3 little kids, have 3 little
Right.
boys pray, and then throw in a couple of, I don't know. I would like to just, if I could put them in order, I'd mess it up, but I normally just, whoever's in whatever order works out, but I normally just, wherever the 3 of them little boys are sitting out, we're starting there, and I make somebody move, and I sit down beside them, and
Hmm.
and run around. But the the guy who was baptized January 1st, he said, we got done with the prayers, and I mean, we're down there praying for an hour, and he goes, man, I was so close. He said, I even had it written down. He had his prayers written down on a sticky note. He just didn't have the courage, to do it. Well, he took us aside, me and another guy who used to be an elder in the church years ago, and anyways, Jerry's so encouraging. And anyways, this guy said, because we're doing jail ministry here, as soon as we get on the podcast, I'm going over to jail ministry. Well, this brother has been doing jail ministry with us. He's been going with Jerry a lot, and just learning. Well, it's good for him. Well, he said He said, "Hey, I got to ask you a question." He's like, "Where's this verse at in the Bible?" He's like, "Oh, life's but a vapor." And then he's asking about another one about time. And he said, I just want to share with them boys tomorrow. I want to share with them 2 verses about time and how that, life is short and they need to get right with the Lord, immediately. And I'm just sitting here thinking, like, you don't have the courage to pray amongst 20 guys that love you and care about you and all these things, but yet you got the courage that you fixed to go in here with a bunch of hard knock inmates, and they've been going in a sex offender pod, and that's where they've been going the last couple of weeks. And you're going in there with these guys, and you're fixing to share with them Bible verses out loud with guys that you barely know.
Right.
And but just seeing, he was the only guy that didn't pray in the group last night.
Well, that's just one of them things. Is we work these things up in our head. You know what I mean?
I know.
And it's just our head is our head space is our biggest challenge, man. And do you still keep up with Mark Brady? Any?
Oh yeah. I was on the train in Chicago. I mean, on the bus in Chicago, and he called me up this week.
Yeah, Mark Quitman is kind of, since he's moved to Meridian, some of the Quitman guys came down here. I preached a meeting up there at Quitman I don't remember when it was.
A couple weeks ago.
Week 4 last, something like that. And they were all talking about it, and Mark was, they said they got 20. They came down here to KW and got our little fold up baptistry. I don't know what you call it, the portable one.
Portable baptistry.
And they towed it up there, and they're trying to get they're actually trying to get the police the jailhouse to buy one, because there's some kind of weird roadblock they run into. You familiar with all this?
Every facility is different.
Yeah, I'm saying with this specific situation, not just in general, but they got like 20 some people up there that are ready to obey the gospel, but they ain't got no way to do it up there. And so all that's because of what you did with Mark Brady at the jail. I mean, all that's due to that. And so, that's just a seed, that just goes back to that whole seed principle. You can count the seeds in an apple, but not the apples in a seed. And you just have to purpose in your heart. Taylor, what'd you preach about yesterday morning?
Making up your mind.
Point the mic at your mouth, son. Make up your mind.
Yeah, there we go. I talked about Daniel.
Hey, Taylor, that mic moves. Actually, look, watch this.
Okay.
It moves all around and everything.
I talked about Daniel 1:8. Some translation said he resolved or
purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the king's delicacy. Yeah.
And so this is a powerful lesson that I learned last week, Bob. Carson went with us to so every 2 years there is a tool show in Chicago, and you may say, listeners may say, Chris, what in the world are you doing how is that an evangelistic thing at a tool show? Like, well, hear me out, okay? And just as much as Mark Brady, an inmate he was in Purvis, right? Lamar County.
Purvis, Mississippi, Lamar County Jail.
Yeah, led to there's 21. I forgot what they told me. 20 some people ready to obey the gospel. There. Every 2 years, the International Machine Tool Show is in Chicago, and what it does is they have this. I mean, this is like 4 million square foot. It's at the McCormick Center. So anytime you see a video of Chicago and they show the big, huge building, I mean, like, you can look out from the top floor.
They're all huge. They're all Trump sized up there, just about.
Well, what I'm trying to illustrate is when you look out the window of the West Building and you see the stadium where the Bears play, and it looks like a high school football field because you're in such a huge building. I mean, like, each building is the size of the mall in Hattiesburg, if that gives you an idea. And there's 4 of them, right? And all 4 of these buildings are full. One of them is metal removal, so it'd be like machine tools, cutting tools, stuff like that, ways that you can remove metal. One of them is metrology, where you measure stuff at. Metrology is just a nerdy way of saying how to measure something fancy. And you've got all these different aspects of it. Well, I just thought, if I could take the Next Tech kids up there and, let them, because I can't, we can't expose them to everything here. There's just so much, there's so many layers to it. But if you could have some snap moments with them where they could see all the most cutting edge technology, all the most added. I mean, they had 3D printers set up in there, Bob, the size of the Next Tech shop. They were 3D
Right.
printing. They were 3D printing like a boat in there. Just think of, I mean, so you got all this stuff in there, and then like you walk into the metal removal section, and just the first two booths, Haas and Mazak, which are two of the biggest machine tool manufacturers in the world. If not the biggest, if you put them together, they would probably equal the two biggest. But when you walk in and their booths, Bob, are $2 million. I mean, that's how much it costs to rent the space that their booth is in. Just for 2 weeks, they are unloading 468, I think, don't hold me to this, 450 semi trucks daily for 2 weeks leading up to this place, just to get you to understand how big this event is, right? And they only do it every 2 years.
So to set up that booth, they're unloading 450 semi trucks to set up their booth.
No, just in general.
Okay.
450 semi trucks now that's just the people that ship stuff in by semi. There was people that showed up in their own box trucks and because Chicago is just a huge epicenter of manufacturing. So there was tons of people that are going to be, because it's local. I mean, not local, it's central, so you can ship from Chicago any direction and you're halfway across the country, no matter where you start from.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, there was a lot of mentality that went into Chicago. And I mean, Illinois is a liberal, state and things. And I just have never really cared to go to Chicago. But man, I'll tell you, like, it was, me and Courtney went up there to spend a couple of days, and man, it was nice. And, I wasn't quote unquote looking forward to it, but I really enjoyed myself, like, beyond measure, compared to just the things to do and the architecture of the city, learning things about it.
It made you appreciate living in the country, though, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Like just like you're in a city like this, and you realize that within this city, there are people that could live in this little area that you're in and never have to travel more than 5 miles. You know what I mean? And really that could be an isolationist thing, because you got everything you need. I mean, you think about it, there's millions and millions of people in this city. And so, just in 5 square miles of your place, wherever you're at, you're going to have doctors and grocery stores. And we went to Aldi's the first night there, and the chick was like, she was waiting on us to get in the parking lot because she stuck her head out the door and then locked the door on us. We got there at like 8:25, and she was locking the door. I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "We closing." I said, "What time? 8:26?" She said, "No, 8:30." I said, "Well, it ain't 8:30." She said, "Can you do your shopping in 1 minute?" I said, "I got 5 teenage boys in here." I said, "It's going to take quite a lot more time than 1 minute to do my shopping." She said, "Okay, well, you got to come back." Click. That was the end of it. So right beside of it was a Hispanic grocery store. And so I just
Chris taking the Next Tech kids into the Stop and Rob Hispanic store in South Chicago.
Look, dude, this is not a one of these little hole in the wall joints. I mean, this is the full blown grocery store, and nobody in there spoke English. You understand what I'm saying? Like, nobody.
Listen, nobody in Chicago speaks English.
What was funny to me was Henry was like Henry's from Uganda, and he's adopted, and he was like 18 months old, or he was a little bitty guy, so he sounds like us, talks like us,
he's a piece of work, man.
Oh,
and
yeah, he is.
I've known him for a minute.
and Henry was like, "Why has this city got so many Hispanic people in it?" And I was like, "Henry, there's more of them than there are of you now. Just remember that." He's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "They're the largest minority in America now." He was like, "I didn't know that." I was like, "Well, Henry, this is proof of that, son. I don't know what to tell you." And
yeah, you either got to speak Spanish, Yugoslavian, or Afghan. You got to speak some Middle Eastern language. It's crazy. It
was and
the diversity in Chicago.
I told myself, I was like, "What do you do if you come in a place like this and you can't speak Spanish? I mean, like, do you rely on Google Translate? I mean, you have to just ask for where's the bacon at? Where's the the ground beef?
So your kids
like
your kids ate stuff with Spanish writing all over it all week?
all week long. And so we ate chicken quarters with adobo seasoning on them every night. We ate hamburgers that didn't say hamburger. It said carne molida on it, which means ground beef on it every night that week. And so that was our options available to us. And I didn't want to run around Chicago, especially my first night there, because you in a city like that and you ain't got no idea what's going on. And it's like, I hate going to New Orleans. It always amazes me that people want to fly to New Orleans and visit it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
And so but our intentions were this, right? Our intentions were to go to Chicago and let the kids see all the technologies available to them, and for me to try to meet and interact with some of these really important companies. And so, Bob, these are some things that I was amazed by there. Okay. And I've been very cautious to try not to talk about some of these things because I don't ever want it to make it seem like I'm talking about Chris. And so I always struggle with this in my heart, that I don't want praise, nor do I ever want praise, because it just is a slippery slope. When you start desiring praise of men, then that's who you're going to seek to please. And so I struggle with these things constantly, and I'll just kind of lay that on the table. But I know that I learned this lesson is that what we're doing with the Next Tech is bigger than us. And Bob, I was blown away. And I can't explain this, but I'll tell you this, is that if you mentioned that Chicago or Illinois is a liberal state, and it's really the cities that carry these things. It's really not
right.
the states. I mean, Illinois got a lot of farmland, and so all those guys are going to be voting red, but or conservatives, whatever. But and I don't even want to talk about politics because I hate politics. But I just told myself, like, I'm going to spend time talking to these companies, but there's some things I'm going to do. And, like in Daniel 1 and verse 8, that verse, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now, T, you made a good point about this yesterday. What do you think Daniel was saying with that right there?
Well, while his brothers and sisters were out there in bondage, he wasn't going to get comfortable with the king and eat all the things that he was giving them, because how can he, I guess, be comforted and nourished and all these things and look out at his brothers that I guess are starving?
And like I've heard people say before that, like, he didn't want to, there was his dietary restrictions that would keep him from doing that. Well, that doesn't even say anything about that there. I mean, they very well could have been eating beef and goats. And I mean, like, we've been eating cows and goats for just as long as we've been eating hogs. As a matter of fact, we probably consume more goats in the world than we do hogs in any given time, because the majority of the world eats goats and sheep.
For most of the stuff I read, it would have been more like bread, and like the vegetables, it had been like grain, like that soldiers would have ate.
Yeah.
So nothing about, none of the research that I did had anything like it was pork or any of that. It was simply
nothing that would have been against a Jewish dietary restriction.
Yeah, nothing.
And so this is something that I told myself I was going to do. And I'll tell you this, Bob, this is why you can't listen to the rhetoric, is that I told myself everybody that I talk to, that I'm trying to get as much recognition as I can for the Next Tech Academy while I'm here. I said, I'm going to talk to every single one of them about the church. And if I talk to every single one of them about the church, and this is a barrier between us and them, I want to know where that barrier is at right out of the chute. I just don't want to waste my time. I don't have but so much time, and there's just so much ground to plow that I'm plowing the road both ways constantly. And I'll tell you this, Bob, this is the honest truth and I don't know how else to say this. Every single person that I talked to, and I told every single one of them that gave me any real time to talk to them. I mean,
Yeah.
and that was 95% of them. But so I told every single one of them that, hey, this is the ministry of our church. And you know what every one of them said? Wow, that's really interesting. That's amazing. That's awesome that you guys are doing this. You know what nobody said? You can't be doing that. That's wrong. You mean you're teaching them about Jesus? Nobody, Bob, nobody said that. As a matter of fact, if you look at on our Next Tech page, the Instagram, on our Instagram page on there, I met the president of Mitutoyo America, which Mitutoyo is the world's largest measuring tool manufacturer. I mean, there's some big guys domestically. Starrett is a big guy domestically, but there is nobody in the world that's the size of Mitutoyo. And because they make
Yeah, he was singing the praises of the Next Tech Academy. I heard that interview.
Bob, I'm telling you, Bob, like the guy, he even said in there, he was like, we've got to be doing what they're doing. And the reason why it's what we're doing is different is not that we're not teaching these fundamentals, but I told him, I said, we're different because of this. I said, number one, this is a ministry of our church. And number two, I said, we follow the same model that our Lord used. And I said, we follow a discipline model. And I said, not only, I said, we've got, for example, our senior class is teaching our junior class. That's a complete wing of teaching that we've abandoned. And I said, you think about it. Jesus focused on 12 guys. I mean, he had all the masses and everything like that he was trying to affect too. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there was 120 on Pentecost. I get that. Right. But his brothers, he had to die for his brothers to believe in him. Okay. But the 12 that he focused on, he really focused on those guys so that they could teach somebody else. And, Bob, I was blown away by the people that would come to me. Like, I remember one guy from Fanuc, which is the biggest robotics. I mean, they're kind of synonymous with, as you would think Rancho is with suspension, or Bosch is with spark plugs or something like that. These guys are synonymous with robotics, like a robot that'll pick up a part and put it in a machine and let it cut it. And it's just feeding these machines constantly. You go over to Kohler here in Hattiesburg, and they've got work cells that are feeding, like our CNC machines in the shop. They'll have one robot that's feeding 8 machines. This thing is just sitting there constantly working around constantly. I had
because it ain't going to be on its phone doing whatever,
right,
or texting a girl or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Got to go take a vape break or something, And but the guy from Fanuc, man, he said, this is what he said. Now we can have this whole discussion about this later, but it's not important. But he said, hey, are you that pastor that runs that Votech school? And I was like, I am. And now, I wasn't claiming to be a pastor or anything like that. So anybody that gets up in arms over that, I was simply validating to his understanding what and who I was. And
to most of I guess the United States and the South, at least, when people say, "Hey, are you that pastor?" they're saying, "Hey, are you that preacher at that
That's
church?"
Right.
And
this guy was a Yankee. He was from Michigan, right?
Yeah.
And he looked around, kind of doing these things, and he said, I'm a believer too. And Bob, what that really means is that there are so many people that want to step into the light. You understand what I mean?
Absolutely.
And they just need a way. I mean, we've got a way. I mean, you think about that. So here's some things that I learned. Okay. Number one, if I purpose in my heart that I'm just going to do the right thing, no matter what, I'm just going to talk about, I'm here to do the whole reason the Next Tech Academy exists is to glorify God. And I'm going to do that and all that. I'm not going to hide it. I'm not going to hide it under a bushel. And Bob, I had no barriers at all. As a matter of fact, you got to see people. I literally, the Titans of CNC guys. I mean, these are these, media, social media influencers for the industry. They show huge speeds and feeds and stuff like that. Bob, I'm not kidding you. I sat down at a table and had a Bible study with 3 of those guys in the middle of thousands and thousands and thousands of people. I mean,
Yeah,
just
most of the barriers that are going to come up with you not sharing Jesus with somebody, it's just going to be the barriers that are in your own mind. You're going to create most of those because the inmates at the jail want to hear about Jesus. The people who are in your church want to share life with you, and they want Scripture to be in the context of your conversations. People are really craving it, and talking about Daniel. I mean, that's one of that's a key verse in our household, Daniel 1:8, that you're going to have to purpose in your heart about these things, whatever it is. If you're going to live a Christian life, you're going to purpose in your heart. If you're going to share Jesus with somebody, you're going to purpose in your heart. If you're going to be kind to your brother and you're going to love him, you're going to purpose in your heart about it. Well, I keep going back to Exodus 4 and thinking about Moses, and the next tech is a good example of this, but there's a lot of people that don't understand that, like, what God can do with your faith of the mustard seed is far beyond your what we can think or ask. There's and what we can perceive in our hearts that would happen, and that's what Ephesians talks about, that
Right,
the power
3:20,
that
yeah.
works in us,
yeah, that's right.
far more exceeding. And he doesn't say the power that God works;
Right.
it's the power that works in us. And so you are a tool as one of God's born again Christians. You are a tool and a vessel for him to do amazing things, but it's your limited faith. Oh, you have little faith. How many times did Jesus say that? And it's those things that will keep us from speaking. It's those things that will keep us from walking and doing the things that we should be doing. And it's not about us. It's not about a work system. It's about allowing being born again and allowing God through the Holy Spirit to work in our lives through the Word of God, speaking to us through the Word, and working in our lives to bring these things about. And God is building Moses up this whole time. Moses has been on a 40-year sheep keeping thing, being away from Israel. But you just think, like, Moses wasted from the time, the time period that me and you are in right now, from about the time he's
Our
40,
lives. Right.
our lives. And you think about how influential that you can be. I dread the days that my kids are no longer kids in my ministry work.
Right.
I look forward to the days of watching them grow and being adults and leading in the church. There
Right.
are, our kids are already leading. I don't mean,
I
Case
know
was
what you mean.
leading us. Yeah. And,
Right. I get
but
what you're
like,
saying.
it just,
Aiden preached in Leaksville yesterday. I understand what you're saying.
exactly. And so with that, it's a hard thing, but God is building Moses up, after this 40 years of him fleeing Egypt and running away from the things that he's afraid of. And God, he's just, chapter 4, verse 1, Moses answered, said, but suppose they will not believe me or listen to my voice. Suppose they say, the Lord has not appeared to you. And so God he's listen to the things that he's told Moses this whole time in chapter 3. He says, verse 7, I've surely seen the oppression of my people. I've heard their cry. I've come down to deliver. Verse 8, God's going to deliver. Verse 10, come now. I'm going to send you to Pharaoh. Moses, verse 11, he said, who am I? Verse 12, so he said, I will certainly be with you. God's going to be with you. And I'm just hitting the highlights. Verse 13. What is his name? What shall I say to him? Talking about you, God. What am I going to say to him?
Yeah. Who's authority, right? I need some kind of name that I can name drop, right? Like, Bob Timms sent me over here to do this.
Yeah, tell him the I am, sent you, and that's it. We're broke ground on building our house, and so I'm talking to all these guys. I'm doing some subbing out myself, and they're like, tell him I know you, and
Right.
and so that's a powerful thing, and it's something I very appreciate. You know, and you got a name, and how are you gonna use that reputation? God says, tell them the I am sent you, and I'm paraphrasing that. And he's saying Pharaoh's not gonna let you go. He's like, so I'm gonna stretch out. Not even a mighty hand's gonna let you go. So I'm gonna stretch out my hand. And he's saying, I'm gonna give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. God just tell them. He's just saying in verse 18, they're gonna heed your voice. They're gonna listen to you. He's just speaking life into Moses, and Moses is going, but what if they're not going to? And finally, God says in chapter 4, verse 2, he says, what's that in your hand? He said, a rod. And it's what Moses had been holding on to and what he had been doing for the last 40 years, and that's just keeping sheep. And he's saying, I'm going to take that same stick in your hand. I'm going to take that same wrench in your hand. I'm going to take that same hammer. I'm going to take that needle and thread that's in your hand, that cooking pan, whatever it is in you as a Christian's hand. And he says, I'm going to now use that to glorify me. If you'll do it, but you're going to have to do it. He said, what's that in your hand? So the question I have for whoever's listening to our podcast today is, what's in your hand? What, Chris, you can't go in there. You couldn't have gone up to, I know that you could cook some things, all right, but you couldn't have gone up there to Chicago and competed with the cutlery people. No. or competed with, with these chefs. Me and Courtney got off this train, and it takes about, it took me about, I don't know, half a day to figure out this whole train system and which way they're going in Chicago, and the GPS ain't picking up because you got all this metal and rebar in the city, and you're this
and it's magnetic.
Walker.
And it's magnetic.
Yeah, and so my GPS is jumping all over the place, on this thing, and I'm like, no, I'm walking toward Wells and Franklin, and it's like, why am I over here on this? Anyways, it was just all ridiculous, and so we get off the train and we're walking through, and I'm like, we're walking down these steps, and I'm like, from this train area into this building, and because you had to go like to the lobby, and then it lets you on the street. I'm like, this is a dumpy little old building. Man, I walk out there. It is the largest building of displays of kitchens and bathrooms and flooring and like all of America. And they don't sell a thing in there. All it is the display shows. It's just the big thing. And so we walk out, and immediately I'm seeing all these, these gas ovens and stuff. These things are $20,000, Chris. $20,000 ovens. Yes.
Does somebody pop out and work for you in it or something? Do they got like a little bed?
It is unreal. Chef Boyardee comes out himself, and he's like, what would you like? And then you can punch another button, and this guy comes out, and he's like, more chicken fried rice, and I'm like, anyway. So we kind of walk through there, and me and Courtney are just dreaming. I ain't gonna say we ain't buying one of these things because she's kind of in love with them. But I'll tell you this thing, we ain't buying no $20,000 stove. I know that thing. Anyways, I'm over here looking at the cheaper models, which ain't many,
Right.
Baby, we're in a discount section over here. No, it's
half-price
immaculate.
stove is still $10,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The half-price stove is still $10,000.
I know it. And so anyways, we're looking at this stuff. Well, this little, this girl who's dressed up in immaculate, clothing, she ain't got her hair out of place, she's got high heels on, and
no, her feet's hurting. I saw them girls at the tool show. I mean, we walk 20,000 steps a day, and them girls got them little shoes on with the little speck on the end of it. They balancing their foot in the back, and you're like, man, I know them girls' dogs.
I bet this girl looks like Barbie. She didn't weigh 120 pounds, whatever.
Right.
And I'm sitting here, and she's setting up. I was like, hey, I got a question about this model over here, and she's the only person in there, and she's like, oh, okay, and so she was on the French line of this company or whatever, on the French side of this stuff or whatever. And I'm sitting there thinking, you ain't cooked. I bet this girl definitely ain't. I know she ain't ate no homemade biscuits, but I know she ain't cooked none either probably. And so I'm sitting there thinking, like, am I going to get advice about an oven from this little Barbie looking, cute girl or whatever? Well, we were in there kind of looking. I was like, I'm okay. Thanks. She didn't know the answer or whatever. She's like, let me see if I can find somebody. She's like, nobody's here. Well, anyways, this lady was pregnant, come in there. She just had her regular kind of sweats on or whatever. And And I said, "Do you work here?" And she said, "Oh yeah." She said, "I'm a chef here." She's like, "We just kind of got the day off. They're preparing. They do all these shows for all these huge corporations." And anyways, I said, she was like a top end chef, and man, she was the sweetest lady ever. But so I started asking her questions about these things, and she's like, you don't want this one." She's like, "You want that one." And because she knew, she knows the ins and outs because she's the one that's cooking. You know, she's just saying something like, she recognized that we were
Not $20,000 stove.
not $20,000 stove people. All right, we're the
Walmart people, not Target.
yeah. She's like, so she's looking at, yeah, like you're carrying a regular, you wearing Courtney's carrying this little bitty old purse, that ain't got whoever, Luke. I don't know what the names of them names on there, but anyways, she just said the brass tops are nice. She said, but they're going to eventually look like that right there. She's like, when you cook on them enough, she's like, the brass is going to look that way right there. And she's like, you just get the cast iron ones. That doesn't matter. And but she gave so much insight. Well, it's what was in her hand, and she was helping us with what was in her hand. And I wasn't expecting Barbie to give me, and then next thing you know, this little Oriental guy comes in, and he's also a salesman. And so you had a Barbie doll and Oriental guy who are the salespeople of this company or whatever. It's like, I don't want to talk to you because you're not cooking, and I want to talk to the chef.
Right,
and
the chicken in sweatpants with the belly.
Yeah, and then so she went. So then she goes and she gets She went back to a back room. We kind of look around a little bit more. She comes back out. And she's got her whole chef suit on. She just wore the sweats on the commute in. She didn't. Right. She keeps out her chef suit at the whatever. But God looks at Moses. He says, "What's in your hand?" And this rod that God that He was correcting sheep with and leading sheep and wandering with sheep. He's going to use this rod in miraculous ways. He's going to go to the world power at the time. And God is going to use that shepherd's rod to deliver His people in amazing and at that time very miraculous ways. And it was the same stick he'd been holding on to for arguably 40 years and doing nothing with it for God's glory. Now, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter what you're doing or what what's in your hand, and do you have the faith of the mustard seed, and will you purpose in your heart to use what's in your hand for God's glory?
Well, and we know now, if anything, that we've got to think differently, and because of that, like we're meeting in the morning, and we're going to talk about the next. We're going to lay out the 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10-year plan because it's at the point now. Yeah, I mean, it's at the point now that like, so if you take the next step, I mean, we're with the government schools after us, with the private schools after us, with the homeschool, of course, after us. I got to go meet with the president of Southern Miss one day this week. You got Mississippi State reached out to me. So you got all these people that are talking to you that want to collaborate, as their words, not mine. With you. You realize that you're at a point to where, and here's just some interesting factoid. And now I'll just say this, I'll preface this by saying I hate politics and I'm very careful about talking about politics, but I want to say this just from a pure logistical fact. If Trump is elected again, he landed more jobs in America than in history than any other sitting president has. In other words, the manufacturer of whatever company brought their jobs back home. He increased the tariffs to where it was a point to where it wasn't profitable for companies to manufacture goods overseas anymore. So they relanded those jobs, right?
Yeah, if you're going to have to pay 200% tax of what what they're calling tariffs for you to bring your car into America from overseas,
you're gonna make it here.
You're gonna make it here. So you come build your factory here and employ our people.
And so what's going to happen, Bob, is that I was thinking about this morning about this, that if Trump gets elected, now this isn't a for or against Trump speech. Now, like I said, I hate politics, but you think about what that's going to do. I mean, we're 300,000 jobs short right now. We're 300,000 machinist jobs short in America right now. And somebody's got to make the difference. Something's got to change. Like, we want to be to vocational training what the Titans have been, for example, to CNC. And what I mean by that is that we want to be, and I'll just say this the way that I've said it over and over again this week. We want to be a city on a hill. We want to let our light shine. We want to really make a difference. And so you think about the way that you can ask and pray and look for these things to come to fruition. Bob, I'm just telling you that the reason why the industry really was so attracted to what we're doing, it's not because of my dashing good looks. You understand?
No, and it's not because y'all are big and powerful. It's about the future.
Exactly right. It's about what can become through a set of mics,
and that's what the way that president of that company sees you talking with, and you having 16-year-old kids teaching 14-year-old kids things in the machine shop. What he sees in that is something far beyond. It's the same similar way of what God sees in you as a listener to this podcast and as a Christian. He sees the potential in you and what you can do. I mean, when Saul of Tarsus was converted, this conversation that the Lord is having with Ananias, God said, he's a chosen vessel of mine. Yeah. And I've got these things laid out for him to do.
Remember what Ananias is like? He's like, hey, God, don't
I've heard many things about this dude.
Yeah, this guy, like, I don't want to say this too loud, I don't want to seem disrespectful, but this guy is a mess. He kills us, God.
Yeah. You sure you got the right guy?
You're right, exactly.
And how many times have I questioned God,
Yeah, exactly. And so, I just know this, Bob, is that, we learned that if we do like Daniel did, right, and understand what God did with Moses, is that, like, I'm just going to purpose in my heart that I'm going to make this thing front and center. When we had our open house a few weeks ago, and just for the homeschoolers, and at 11 o'clock, we went from 11 to 1, there was over 50 people there, right at the shoot. And I realized right then, I was like, okay, all the plans I'd done for a little project and all this and that and other, like, I did not know what I was getting myself into here. So I just got everybody in the shop, and I was like, we're going to talk about this from the top down and make sure we're going to separate the wheat from the chaff right now. If you're not interested in spiritual things, and it's not that I'm not interested in you, but there are so many people that I've only got so much time that I can plow the ground that I've got. And Bob, I've just learned, if there's anything that I've learned, is this: I haven't learned enough. And that's all I know how to say. I just haven't got it figured out. But the Lord.
Well, that's why humility is so important. And prayer is not going to make God any more God than what He is. But what it's going to do is it's going to place you in the position that you belong on your knees, and place Him in the position He belongs, and that's sitting on the throne. And He's in charge. He's in the position of being in charge. And our prayer life should be praise. It should be in the nature of request, and just like the sinner and the Pharisee who were in that scenario that Jesus was talking about. One guy's on his face, on his knees, beating his chest, saying, "Lord, be merciful to me, a sinner." And the other guy's sitting there saying, "God, I'm glad I'm not like these other people, especially like this Pharisee, like this sinner right here." And this is the unique thing about Daniel too. Is Daniel is probably, from what we understand, I mean, he's a Hebrew teenager when he's making this decision,
and a eunuch now.
Yeah, and he's a eunuch. I mean, he's not even become a eunuch for God's glory. He's forced into this thing,
right?
And
because he was, that they saw something in him, right?
And so I want our listeners to really understand this about Daniel. But he was taken from his homeland. They they forced him to learn a new language and new culture about how to serve a king that was foreign to his people, who had actually conquered his people. And so you just think if the Chinese comes over here and conquers us, and that's while I'm, whoever it was, Ukisago or whatever his name is with Japan years ago, the general said, you'd never invade America because there'd be a gun barrel behind every blade of grass. That's still true today, but the Chinese they're not going to.
They're saber rattling.
Well, it's not just saber rattling. They're already doing it. I mean, there's waves of people that are coming across. Chinese are coming across the border in groves of people, and they're military aged males. And I'm not trying to get into anything political here. This is just a reality. But they're gonna slow walk this thing. And China's got so much patience that they'll have a 50 and 100 year plan to take over and slowly just remove America. And America is TikToking their way. This is what the church is doing, and this is what our economy is doing. We're TikToking our way straight to we're sitting here with idle hands, looking at the next woman on TikTok or next little funny thing or whatever, and not purposing in our heart what we should be doing for the Lord and in our lives of industry and those kind of things. But Daniel's had he's been taken out of his homeland. They forced him to learn a new language and new culture, and then they changed his name. And Daniel says, okay, you can make me learn a new language. You can make me serve a new king. You can make me learn a new language. You can take away my manhood.
Yep, culture, everything.
He said, but I'm still going to be a man of God. You're not going to take this away from me. I'm going to purpose in my heart.
I'm not going to defile myself, is what he said. I'm just not going to do it.
And you and I mean, we have to purpose in our hearts in everything that we do. If not, you will wake up and you will find out that what you have done all day long is wasted your time. That's right. If we can ever in the church get people to realize that, man, God has created you in Christ Jesus for good works, to glorify Him, and that's Ephesians 2:10. That you're created in Christ Jesus. You are His workmanship.
Before that, you're saved, right? You're by grace you've been saved, and then for what, Bob? Created in Him for what?
Yeah, you're His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works. Well, that phrase workmanship that phrase is used, and that wording is used 2 times in the New Testament. One is there in Ephesians 2:10. We are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works. And the other one's Romans 1:20. That phrase that's used, it's only used twice in the whole New Testament. And what he's talking about in Romans 1:20 is so that he says the invisible attributes of God are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. That phrase, that are made, is that same Greek word. And it says, so that they, the unbelievers, the sinners, they're without excuse. And you're created in Christ for good works, so that somebody else is without excuse about Jesus. Yeah. So the question is, what's in your hand, and are you going to purpose in your heart to do with what God wants you to do?
Well, Bob, I appreciate your time, and we'll talk about it next week. I got something I want to talk about interesting about this next week, from just making mistakes and learning from your mistakes. And so,
thank y'all for being patient with us. We know we haven't been on here in a couple of weeks, and we've had crazy things going on. And pray for the new converts. I mean, baptized a lady last Sunday, and she had just been really putting things off, and there's a movement that's happening right now, and people are craving Jesus. And
amen. It's because there's so much darkness, man. When there's so much darkness, the light's just going to be brighter.
And Chris, I baptized 3 people in their 60s that were all stand-up citizens. They were all people like Cornelius.
Yeah, just regular
people, and people who are in their 60s right now are saying, "That's right. I'm gonna purpose this for God now."
Amen. All right, Bob. We'll see you next week. We'll see you guys. Thank you.